Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Steve Simpson, and I'm speaking to you from the side of the River Thames in London, and that's a great place to be. Wherever you are, I hope you're having fun and enjoying all the wonderful things that are out there for you. Now, I mentioned in my last video challenge that I'm looking for new volunteers, so that's the first thing I'm going to mention today. I promised to do one of these programs every week and until I ran out of material. So I now need some more brave people to send me an email, tell me what your biggest challenge or frustration is, and agree to letting me talk about you on this video. So look forward to hearing from you soon. Now, just a bit of an update from the two previous video challenges. The first one was the golfer Andy. Last time I heard from him, he was happy and rushing off to the practice ground to try and knock some shots off his score. And last week I mentioned Bob, who is the darts player who finds playing in tournaments somewhat stressful and certainly isn't able to produce his peak performance then. And if you remember, I demonstrated this technique called self-havening, where one strokes one's arms in a particular way and repeats an affirmation. In very simplistic terms, this is a way of connecting touch, a reptilian reflex, something that all mothers do to their children, to words and to visualizations and affirmations, which seem to go straight to the mid part of the brain. So I had an update from Bob. He has been performing this self-havening for 5 minutes twice a day for several days now, and I didn't give him any kind of prompt as to what to expect, and he wrote to me with a concern. He said, is this unusual? When I'm doing this technique, I find myself becoming quite emotional. Well, it's not unusual at all, and in fact it's a great sign that things are going well, because Bob had a very sad story of repeated life traumas really from the age of 10, and in fact many of you have written into me and said that when you were watching this video you had a lump in your throat, and I can understand why. So what Bob is describing is that some of these traumatic events are starting to surface from the unconscious into the conscious mind, and by doing so they're freeing some of those bonds that have made them permanent memories. This is the basis of post-traumatic stress, and I did mention, even though I don't like these terms, that I felt that he'd suffered from a series of stresses throughout his life, which had a cumulative effect. I mean, they'd have been bad enough on their own. So anyway, Bob is off to a really great start, and I'm sure we'll have more updates from him. Now, the subject today is Talis, and Talis is a pastor, and he comes from Latvia. So let me just read a few things that he says. I will use as much as possible to learn from you. I watch your videos, and I've already read 2 of your books. Well, good. I hope you enjoyed them. So it means that I'd like to learn many things from you as the expert of performance. Well, I mean, I like to hear that. I like to be referred to as an expert of performance, but I do just have a comment here. Really, the only expert of performance I am is my own performance, because there are some things in my life that I've done really well. And I'm not boasting here, because I think all of us, if we're honest, we all know that we're capable of doing a few things very well. So in that regard, in the things that I do well, ignoring all the many things that I'm useless at, I am an expert of performance. But I want to stress one thing right from the beginning, and I say this to all of my VIP clients. I help you to become an expert of performance, because I act merely as a catalyst. You have some potential inside you that for one reason or another has stayed largely hidden. So I'm a catalyst, and any results that you get, you own. I don't own them. I know there are some coaches who are out there who, claim credit for absolutely everything that their clients do. Well, I'm not one of them. Anyway, let's go back to Talis. I would like to describe my challenge. Good, here we go. I've worked as a Christian pastor for almost 20 years. I studied theology and everything about pastoral work. I could say that I'm quite good professionally in this profession. Well, again, he's being very modest because I'm certain that he is more than good. Talis is one of the clients, by the way, that I have actually met him. I think he was at an event in October with Paul McKenna and Richard Bandler, and I was on one of the members of the training team then, so I did speak to him. And not only to me, but to many of the other people there, Talis came across as a very sincere, charismatic person who you could tell he was deeply into his work. So I'm sure that he was and still is a really good pastor. So he says, but for the last 5 years, I'm very interested in the profession of life coaching. Well, that's good. I mean, it's a great profession to be in. I have to warn you that it's a very overpopulated profession. There are many, many, many life coaches. And just as you would expect, as in any profession, medicine, accountancy, or whatever, some of them are pretty useless. Some of them are averagely good, and some are absolutely brilliant. And that's just the way it is. But there's definitely room in this crowded population for at least another person. So don't let that stop you. At the moment, here we get on to the business, I think. At the moment, I'm 47 years old. Nothing wrong with that. I am not so young. But you're not so old either. I mean, just remember, we are living in this wonderful generation where we can expect to have a high chance of reaching 100. So in that case, you're not even into middle age yet, Talis. Anyway, he says, I am not so young, but I have to learn many things about coaching because I would like to be a very good specialist in coaching skills. Well, that's what I would expect you to say, and I know that you are absolutely excited by learning some of these new techniques that you learned back in October and probably more since then as well. So I try to learn a lot and practice as well. Yeah, well, I'm glad you said practice because that's how we get really good at stuff. We just practice it over and over and over again, and well, I don't know a shortcut to that. And all of the champions that I've profiled or that I've worked with, that's exactly what they do. I remember writing an article about Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One racing driver. Well, he goes into the simulator and spends hours there, and he breaks the race course down into each corner or whatever, and he practices all kinds of different circumstances that could happen. And so when things do happen in the race, and when you're going 200 miles an hour, a lot of things can happen very quick. He has myelinated his responses. So in other words, he doesn't have to use conscious thought. Unconsciously, he knows what he has to do. So, and this is the final part of the note here. And this is a very important bit. But I feel challenge and stress. That dreaded word, stress, that disease, that word that causes all kinds of diseases, high blood pressure and all the other things, even cancer in the long term. So I don't recommend stress to anybody. Anyway, I feel challenge and stress because I feel that I have to learn so many things in a short period of time. A lot of pressure here. What kind of system do you suggest to learn faster the main skills of coaching? Well, I've got several ideas here, several things that could easily work and some things that definitely won't work. Perhaps if I start with the easy stuff, which is the things that won't work, having massive willpower will not help you to learn faster. Beating yourself up and setting yourself unrealistic targets will increase the pressure upon you and the stress. And it's one thing that I hope that teachers have learnt since my generation as a school kid, is that children don't learn when they're shouted at, when they're bullied, when they're humiliated, and even on occasions when they're hit. And I'm certain that the new generation of teachers know that. People learn fastest and best when they are totally relaxed, when they are not worried about what other people are going to say or do, when they don't have any ego concerns, when they're doing stuff, experimenting with things and having a lot of fun. So there you are. Willpower is vastly overrated in my opinion. You're definitely going to need some persistence to be a life coach, of course. But you're going to be the master of that and not the servant of it. So, in fact, I was a bit cheeky. I had coffee this morning with my friend Tony Writin. We've done many podcasts together, and he's interested in the same stuff that I do. He's the founder of Zestology movement. Zestology is a fantastic website. So, have a look at some of the podcasts we've done together. Have a look at his website. So anyway, we were having a bulletproof coffee. He's an ambassador of Bulletproof. He just loves it, and tastes really nice. They say that it's very healthy, and I can believe it. Anyway, I was cheeky, and I showed him your note, Talis, and I said, what's the one thing that you would recommend here? Because Talis wants to he asked, what kind of system do you suggest? And Tony had a quick thought, and he said, well, I think what I would say is that he should model people who have demonstrated that they have learned things quick. Now, modeling is basically modeling. It means looking at somebody who's really good at something and breaking it down and trying to identify what is their secret. So that's a pretty good suggestion from Tony. And so look around you for people. It doesn't have to be as a life coach, but people that you know in your circle or who you can see on YouTube or whatever, who have demonstrated a proficiency and a skill, and it hasn't taken them many, many years to do so. By the way, there are many books that say to be good at anything in life, you have to put in 10,000 hours of deep practice. You can, I'll save you doing the mathematics. That works out that you have to be working at something pretty solidly for 10 years. And whilst there's some truth in that statement, I've actually researched the original papers that this comes from, and it goes back to concert musicians, and you could categorize these musicians, whether they're going to be music teachers, playing an orchestra, or be soloists, by how many hours of deep practice they've done. So you do have to do a lot of hard work, but there are accelerated techniques. So whilst that 10,000 hours is true a lot of the time, it doesn't mean, Talis, that you're going to have to do 10,000 hours from now. Just remember, if you're a life coach, we call those talking therapies. Well, we call them many different things. But you've been working as a pastor already, and whilst I don't know too much about what a pastor does, I can guess, and I'm sure that you spend a lot of time talking to people, especially about their problems, establishing empathy and rapport with them, which of course is a critical skill in a pastor, and it's critical when you're a life coach and you're working one-on-one with people. People have to trust you, they have to respect you, and they have to have the confidence to actually address fear or to do things slightly differently. Because if you're a life coach, there's one thing for sure. Your clients are not going to change their lives and performance and results and all the rest of it unless they change themselves a little bit, well, at least a little bit, and do things at least a little bit differently. So that's why these skills of rapport and empathy and mutual respect are so important. So there we are. That's the 10,000 hours, and it gets back to your question, of accelerated learning. In terms of life coaching, I would study and I know you already are doing, some of the best people. Now, I mentioned, that there's a spectrum of skills in life coaching. Some people are really good and some aren't. Try and identify who are the people in the world who are really the best. Now, there's not that many, and I don't know all of them, but I can just give you a few names that people often will come up with. Tony Robbins, of course, has a tremendous following. Richard Bandler, the co-founder of the NLP movement, is a genius. And then there's people like Paul McKenna as well, who in his field is a genius. All of these people, they have different techniques, but they've all put lots of stuff out there. So watch them at their work. What are they doing? And you see, that is by doing that, get yourself into a relaxed state of mind, through your meditation or whatever, and then watch and or listen to these people without making any judgments. Just let it wash over you. Listen to their voice patterns. Listen to the way they say things. Look at their body movements. Body movements can be very important. And sooner or later, your unconscious mind, which we've already said can move very much faster than your conscious mind, it will start to draw the dots together. What looks like random scatter will sooner or later start to take a shape and a form, because there's one thing that human beings are really good at, and that is pattern recognition. An example. Look at how we can recognize faces so well. Faces that really, at first sight, look very similar, but we can say, oh yeah, that's John, that's Tony, blah, blah. And we form this immense database of people's faces, and then we connect them to names as well, if we're lucky. So there we are, that's a tip. Look, watch these people, listen to these people, and do it using your unconscious mind. I don't recommend watching these people with a clipboard and writing all the things down like a recipe, because this is my final comment about coaching, and it goes back to your first statement when you described me as an expert of performance. When we are learning a new skill, yes, we have to learn from people who are really good at it, but from my own experience and from the people that I've worked with and the clients that I've worked with, breakthroughs come when you start doing your own thing. Life coaching is not a recipe. Being a professional golfer is not a recipe. There are some skills that you master, but eventually there comes a time when, writers call it, you find your voice. You don't need to think about what you're doing. You don't need to think about what you're saying. And that's when you know you have mastered your subject. And that is a very relaxing place to be, because it means that in your own performance, you have no fear. The client that's sitting in front of you, you're not going to be surprised. You may not have dealt with that exact situation ever before, but you'll have dealt with something similar, and you know what kind of techniques work. And as I was speaking, just another final thought came to me, and that is, don't set yourself the pressure and challenge of learning everything all at once. You don't need to. Nobody does. A kid doesn't, learn to play football by learning all of the components of the game of football. Start with one thing at a time. I know that you've done some NLP training. Which is the technique that you enjoyed the most on your course? So use that time and time and time again, and you'll get good at it. And then there'll come a point where you'll be with a client, you say, no, I'm not going to do that. I think I've got something different that just might work. So you're already a good life coach. I have no doubt about that. I also have no doubt that you are going to become even better, and you will do. But you'll only do it if you relax, if you continue to enjoy yourself, you continue to celebrate those small victories that Tony and I mentioned in one of our recent podcasts. That's the one about goals, by the way. It's on my website. It's had huge success on iTunes with the number of people downloading it and liking it and all the rest of it. So that's something that you would listen to as well. So there's loads of information out there for you. The challenge is how to pick out the bits that resonate with you. So I hope, Talis, I've given you some food for thought. All the other people who are watching this video, all of these points could apply equally well to you in whatever you want to do in your life. It might not be life coaching, it could be something completely different, but the approaches are all the same. I mean, I've studied champions, I've written articles and books about it. They all have similar characteristics of success, and some of those are the ones that I've mentioned just now. So there you are, Talis, food for thought. Let me know how you get on, keep in touch. And to everybody else, I hope you found something that you can use too. Just remember, I'm wanting volunteers for the video challenge for these new videos. So do please keep in touch. And in the meantime, enjoy everything that you're doing, post some great results. And just remember, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, as I've been told many times in my life. Okay, speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.